Howdy folks, it's Meandering Mike in the Man Cave of Madness. It is the early morning and we are doing a Hexagon Alley series. This is our look at some old, crusty, back alley, dusty hex encounter war games from long ago. So this particular title, Overlord, is because Overlord is obviously the Normandy invasion, June 6, 1944, and the campaign to break out into France, capture Paris, and push towards and into Germany. So I'm filming this on June 5th. Obviously, June 6th is the anniversary, and so we're doing that now to get this out, hopefully by the evening time, so you'll have a chance to start to view it today or on June 6th. A lot of people like to either play games on Normandy on June 6th or do some reading or watch a war movie on D-Day, etc. So that's what we're doing here. Now, again, this is Conflicts game. This is the second edition. The first edition was designed by John Hill. Yes, John Hill of Squad Leader fame, which came out in 77. This came out in 73. Well, technically, I think it came out to 74, at least according to this second edition rules. They say it came out in 74. Board Game Geek 73. I think it was copyright 73, came out in 74. So this edition here was a redesign and rework by Frank Chadwick. Okay, so part of my interest as a game designer, like comparative game design, I have ordered the original. I don't have it yet. So at some point when that comes, I might do a side-by-side comparison and see, well, what are the difference between the two games, and what might have been Frank Chadwick's rationale for changing certain things in certain ways. But today we're looking at here, the second edition came out in 1977. All right, so let me get the box open. All right, so the box is open. This is the back of the box. We have rule book, combat results table, print affix chart, a couple of reinforcement schedules for the Germans and the Allies, and here is the map and the counters. I have it precariously tipped upside down, but nothing should fall out as long as I keep the map thing. I wanted to take a quick look at some of the stuff on the back of the box here. I'm going to come forward, tilt, and zoom a bit. All right, so it says, can be played in an evening. 3 scenarios, each played in under 3 hours. Can you see that whole thing there if I sort of scan across the side? All right. Moderate complexity, ages 12 to adult. All right, we can see here 300 die counters. All right, 4-color hard mounted map board. It is a mounted map. When you look at it, it's like, that's 4 colors? Well, I think they're counting white as one of them. But it's very reminiscent of simple graphics, a lot early Europa, or kind of like Third Reich or things like that. I'm going to tilt up here and look at this part. Let's see, I'm going to zoom in here and prop this up. It says 3 monthly scenarios plus a grand campaign game. Tactical, strategic, air power, naval, gunfire support, off-board movement rules, and commando units. All right, so we're not going to go into the look at all the historical stuff there. I'm sure all those of you that are watching this have a relatively decent familiarity with Operation Overlord and or the June 6th, 1944 invasion. All right, so let's go ahead and pop out the map, and this is one of those games with the little cardboard insets. So I think one of these came with a little baggie, but I don't think it came with baggies at the time. Would have been a punched out a counter sheet to be punched out, and then most people, I guess, would either use like glassine envelopes or paper envelopes, or some people just throw them in there. I do not like just throwing counters into a box, so I ended up using Ziploc bags. Some people do not like Ziploc bags, but I don't mind them. They seal up nicely. You either use a sandwich bag or a little snack bag. We'll take a look at some of the counters later. If it had been an unpunched version, I would have looked at it now. But let's go ahead and look at the map. A lot of you folks want the eye candy. And like I said, this is a pretty old school here. I'm going to lean this up. Oops, I'm going to knock that box over. All right. So as you can see, this 4-color map, well, yep, there is black and white and green and blue. So I guess that is, and red, so that's actually 5 colors. So I'm not sure if white's counting as a color, black's not, or black's counting as a color and white's not. Let me bring up here of course, the pointer, which was a chopstick. This is how I like, if you've watched this channel much, you know how I have a pet peeve. I like having a terrain effects chart that has everything in one place. You've got the symbol, the name of the terrain, and any effects, combat, in this case, movement, all in one place. I do not like a key where they have, well, here's the symbol and the name, and then somewhere else they have the name, the effect, and this. Now, that other method of splitting up into two, if you're a database designer, you say, well, yeah, you might have a reason to have the name is the key, and you got pictorial symbols, and you have the other data somewhere else. And well, this is not a relational database. This is a game, and you want to flatten, unrelationalize your data, and you want to show it all at once for presentation purposes. So anyway, yeah, that's my background. I've been a computer programmer, database designer, developer, e-commerce dude, and all, business intelligence analysis, and all that stuff. Anyway, enough of my rambling. Meandering Mike wouldn't be a Meandering Mike video without some meandering. So the various terrain that, let's see here, if we zoom in some more here so you can see part of this a little better. There are hills, and you probably can't make it. Well, you might be able to see there's an 84 there in the middle of this hill. There's a 91. All those are elevations, but usually people end up calling them, the hill by the elevation. It's hill 213, hill 112, hill 91, whatever. That's exceedingly common practice. Obviously, we have our major cities, which on the terrain effects chart, oops, they left out the symbology. Major city, black. Minor cities are a dot. You can see that easy enough, but they left out the symbol here. It looks the same as color? No. Yeah, so let's see. Here, con is 2 hexes worth. Here we got Tilt, Avranches, Granville. I'm going to tilt up. Cherbourg's way up there, and it's actually in 3 different hexes. It doesn't look quite that big here, but this is the bulk of the hex, and then there's a partial little bit in that hex and a partial little bit in that hex. So it's spread out over 3 hexes, but it seems about a hex and a half worth of space. All right. So obviously, I'm sure you all knew, bocage, the very characteristic terrain of the hedgerows in this part of northern France. Very difficult to get get through. A lot of technologies were developed to try to cut through and get through the hedgerows. Let's see. We've got obviously here. They're calling it swamp or marsh. I did not realize. I mean, I knew there was marshy areas, basically flooded areas near Utah Beach. They did a lot of flooding in that, which this does not really depict. They're showing here the beach boundaries here for Utah. So there's only flooding here. And I thought there was more flooding a little back, like through here. We have Omaha Beach over here. And so, you know, the fact of like the cliffs, the escarpments, that they don't represent that at all. So I'm not sure how the combat result might take that into account on an actual beach landing. And then interestingly, they just say British, which obviously is the Canadian and British piece. You know, sword, Juno, and gold. They just called it British instead of landing. So maybe for some game purposes and the ease of dealing with it, they just, you know, here's the 2 American beaches, here's the Commonwealth beaches, and they simplified. Possibly there might be a good game reason for that. Okay, so I don't think there was anything else magical. There are primary and secondary roads. Might not necessarily be easy to see it. Here's a good example. Red is a primary road, and black is a secondary road. Now, if you're certain kinds of colorblind, a lot of people are colorblind, like a red-green colorblind, but I think there's also some red-black issue. I know, me personally, I have a black and navy blue issue. They almost look the same to me unless it's very bright light. But so there we go. That's the terrain effects, the map. Like I said, 4 color or 5 color, 4 color including black, I guess. So white's the non-color, blue, green, red, and black are the colors. But very, very simple, but very much in this style, kind of early Europa, like I said. All right, so I'm going to close this up and zoom back out. And we're going to take a quick look at the combat results. This is not a very common thing that's done. There are a few games that I know of that do this, where you have different combat results tables for different time periods. Now, the big classic example, writ large, is War in Europe. You know, SPI's War in the West, War in the East, War in Europe, where they had a whole bunch of different combat results tables. I think, was it 4 or 5? I can't remember. And different countries at different time were on different tables. Okay, so you would figure your odds, but depending who you were and when it was, you would go and consult a particular combat results table. And that reflect, you know, the many things changing over time: army strength, morale, technology issues, etc. So depending on, now there's a little note here on this talking about the difference between the June and the July-August combat results table, and it's saying that, like, so it's a little favoring the attacker down here at the top ends. Actually, at the low ends up here, this favors the attacker a little bit, in that they can actually get on a 1 a positive result attacking at 1 to 3 here, but not here. And your 1 to 2 odds, but you can actually get a little bit. You can get a DR2 here and only a DR1 here. Then they start getting a little more bloody here, like 2 exchanges. Well, there's only 1 here. You can start getting a DE here. So this definitely favors the attack, and like supposed to reflect like the brittleness, the increasing problem with the German defensive troops. You know, still being able to counterattack, but becoming, you know, a little more brittle. So that's an interesting thing to note there. That you gotta remember which month that you're doing, and you're rolling your attack. Okay, and again, there's eliminations, there's retreats, there's exchanges. It does not explain on here the you know, how do you do an exchange? Is it like, you know, 1 unit, 1 step, you know, all of the small guy and then the attacker loses? You have to go and check the combat rule. So there's plenty of room here. Should have been explained here. That's, again, another one of my pet peeves. If you got the space and there's data that you would consult, put it here. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, really quickly, these are well, it's reinforcements and placement. So the placements obviously have a hex number where they start, and no, okay, excuse me. The reinforcements are in the rules. This is the setups for both sides. And depending on which scenario you're playing the June scenario, the July scenario, so obviously you're playing a campaign, you start with the June scenario and you keep going forward. Alternate Rommel plan, so that's nice to know that you do have an alternative defense setup. So again, same thing here. June, a July setup. You don't want to play out the initial landings and the early grind. You want to play something later, you could do that. Or you can start from the very beginning. All right. So the rule booklet here is 8 pages long, but here's the reinforcements. For German units, they're telling you which road. They have roads numbered. I didn't point that out on the thing, but on the map, there's certain numbered roads, and that's where the German reinforcements show up, and the Allies, it mentions the beach that they come in. So, you two are British, which should be Commonwealth. There's Canadians too. Okay, so lots of this. So this is page 5. So you got a little bit of rules here, and then you got all that's there. So there's really only 4 pages of rules, because you take this amount here and you take out this right here. You've got 4 pages of rules. All right. Now this is it's not really a case. It's like an outline format, a rule number, and then a alpha, a capital letter. And they don't drill down any farther than, like, a true outline, you got like number, letter, number, like then Roman numeral, then a lowercase letter, etc. And you can drill down and alternate the farther you go in the hierarchy. Well, this just has rule numbers and then letters as the subset. So it's probably a little friendlier to some people. Than I like the case system. I have no problem with the case system, but this seems like a good compromise in between just free text versus a case format. You show all your unit types here, the unit size designations, various abbreviations. Color coding on some of the units, which when they are in white on all over the United States, black on brown. Things. We'll take a little look at the counters here in a minute. So I want to find that combat rule to quickly look at exchange, because that's what I brought up. They have naval gunfire, they have tactical airstrikes, weather, commandos, special rules on armor, carpet bombing. So they fit quite a bit in here. Armor, cavalry, Riki, and a good old reconnaissance, the Rommel plan, supply, exited allied units, new units, movement. Okay, so rule 8 is combat. But yeah, okay, stacking. It's always nice to know stacking, know an idea of your scope of what you're dealing with. Single division plus 1 non-divisional unit may occupy a hex. Okay, so you have to pay attention to the designations on the counter. Because any and all units of a single division plus any other non-divisional unit can go into a hex. Or any 2 regiment equivalents for the Allies or 3 for the Germans can occupy hex. An airborne, U.S. airborne exception to the above rule. All right, I'm not going to go into the details of that. Sorry if I was not quite looking at the rule plate. So combat. I'm looking for the terrain effects. Okay, here we go. So interesting. On an attacker eliminated, you remove printed factors equal the defender's defense factor modified by train and supply. So you don't necessarily wipe out your entire attacker, except that the fact that you have to remove an amount equal to the modified defender's value, you could easily be totally wiped out. What was the lowest odds that you could still get an AE? 1-to-1. So you just short, there's no fractional. So if you don't quite have 2-to-1, they might have 20 defensive points and you might have 19. So you're attacking at 1-to-1. Excuse me, that would be 1-to-2. Sorry. They could have 10 defensive. You could be attacking with 19. There's the example that I was thinking of, but you might be attacking with 19 points and they have a modified 10. So you could lose up to 10. And depending on your unit size, you know, if you can't make change, you might end up losing more. But obviously at a 1-to-2, if they had they had 20 points and you had anywhere between 10 and 19, you would have to lose 20 points and you're going to be vaporized. So getting an AE at 1-to-2 or less, you're absolutely, definitely going to lose more than they do, unless there's terrain that have you. Do you like defending in the swamp? Does it have you? Great, there's an asterisk here. Yeah, armor is halved in attack and defense. So there's actually a case that armor sitting there defending in the swamp being halved. The attacker that fought them, and if they got an AE, they would end up losing less. You know, there might be a 10 strength armor unit there whose adjusted strength is 5. And if you were attacking with 5 points of infantry, you'd have a 1-to-1 odds, and you'd have to lose all 5. But let's say you were attacking with 9 infantry points, you still had a 1-to-1. You'd only have to lose 5 instead of 9. So meandering through that, but that's sort of an interesting effect. Retreating. The attacker gets to retreat himself. It's an attacker back. So the person retreating gets to choose where they retreat to. Okay, zones of control, blah, 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 away. Wait, although retreat is measured in hexes, units must pay movement costs for each hex entered. Whoa. If a unit is forced to expend more movement points than it has, it is eliminated. Wow, interesting. Okay, this is interesting. So if you get a D2 result, right, and this 2 movement allowance German guy, and it's not in the clear, it's in a place where it's costing 2 per, they're going to die. So like the bocage is 2 movement points. Very interesting. All right. I want to, where's the exchange? Did I miss the exchange? There it is. Defender does remove all. And the attacker removes printed attack factors unmodified equal to defender's defense factor modified. Okay, so in exchange, the defender will die completely. And where... So there is a chance of getting an exchange at 1-to-2. So it is possible to attack at 1-to-2. Let's say they're unmodified. They're in the clear. They have, say, 10 strength and you have 5. You can get that exchange. They would have to lose everything. You'd end up also dying, but they could be losing more. All right. All right. So we have looked quickly through the rules. As I mentioned, there are lots of additional rules covering many different things, particularly the campaign, like the tactical airstrikes, naval gunfire, commando attacks, special rules for armor. I'm trying to see here real quick. Halved on Swamp, halved hacking the Bocage. So there's no others. There's no like odd shifts. They just tend to be powerful units, but they've got some limitations. Okay, we didn't see them. There's something about breakthroughs, which wasn't something on the result, so we'd have to find out what a breakthrough is. What's the definition of that? But if you have armored cav or reconnaissance, if you get a breakthrough, you get 1 extra breakthrough movement point. All right. I'm not going to go look that up. All right. So I was going to show you some of the counters here. Don't want to make this too long. As I do, I tend to meander. But remember, all that meander are not lost. So, trying to make sure that's in focus. So, now, for my eyes, wow, that white on the khaki is very hard to read. I don't know if you can read it through the camera fine when this, but boy, I would have trouble looking at those designations. I would need to get out my 4X reading glasses. I normally wear like 1.25 reading glasses. I don't need glasses to drive or anything. Okay, airborne dudes there. I can tell that they're airborne dudes, but again, reading that that designation, that's going to be a problem for me. All right, let's go look at some other guys here, see if we can find some armor units. So, as usual, for some people, this is a controversial issue. Depicting, well, there's a recon. Their armor. So obviously in black for the Germans, and people like, I don't really care one way or the other. It's sort of become a old school war game shorthand for those naughty German guys. All right, so nothing really special. As we saw in the rules, there was so actually there are a few. There's bicycle troops. So that's actually an assault gun. That's not the armored artillery, the tracked artillery. That's actually assault gun. Flak. Nibelwerfers, the rockets, gliders. So yeah, so those are all specialized armor. I am not sure I have ever seen that. The armor oval with a horizontal slash through it. If you have ever seen this in another game, please comment. Let me know. I've never, ever seen that before. All right, folks. This is Meandering Mike, Man Cave of Madness. We've been looking at Overlord in honor of the... Let me zoom back, tilt out here. Upcoming anniversary of the D-Day invasion, June 6th. 1944. Today is June 5th. This will be out by the evening of the 5th, but be there for your viewing pleasure in case you'd like to do June 6th activities focused around Normandy. So, this has been a episode of my Hexagon Alley. Again, the back streets, back dusty, crusty, musty alleyways of old school hex encounter war games. Again, this was 1977, the rework by Frank Chadwick of John Hill's 1973/1974. There's a little question there. You know, John Hill of Squad Leader fame, he did the original Overlord game, which was also from Conflict Games. So at about this time, this is where GDW bought up all or most of the Conflict Games titles and started reissuing them under the GDW line. I don't necessarily think they did all of them, but most, maybe. All right, so Meandering Mike signing off, and remember, take care of your games, and they will take care of you. Ciao, y'all.